Hi, this is Ed Briggs. I'm adjunct faculty at Kaiser University, and I've developed this brief video to help new students coming into an academic career better understand how to write an effective paper. This presentation will give you some brief tips on effective strategies to write an academic paper that will help you in your academic career. Whenever you're writing an academic paper, you want to make sure you have all the facts you need to meet the objectives of the assignment. Remember that any written assignment in a class should relate back to the objectives for that class. So each paper should have at least a paper summary or a grading rubric to give you some guidance of what the expectations are for the assignment. So you want to download that grading rubric, review it, make sure you identify the key elements of the paper, make sure you understand what the formatting expectations are for the paper, whether it's APA or MLA or whatever paper formatting is required. And if you're unclear regarding what the assignment is, before you start working on the paper, reach out to your professor and ask their input to help better clarify what the expectation is. There's nothing worse than writing a paper and turning it in and finding out you didn't meet the expectations, or getting halfway through a paper and figure out you spent a lot of time working on something that was going in the wrong direction. So make sure you download the rubric or the assignment guidelines, or consult with your professor to get all the information you need. So let me provide you with an example paper that might help you understand the process. So this is an example grading rubric for a paper. And as you see, there are key elements that are required for the paper. So the first key element that is identified is choose a U.S. population or minority with a health disparity. This clearly tells you that you need to identify a population or minority with a health disparity. It's important you understand what the definition of a health disparity is relating back to the class. There are multiple definitions for health disparity. It's important that you identify the correct one relating to the class that you're taking. Next, you are to identify the health disparity that affects that minority or U.S. population. Next, you are required to describe the significance of the health disparity and how it impacts on that population or minority. Next, you're to provide statistical data supporting the existence of the health disparity and the existence of its impact on the population. Now, when we're talking about statistical data, we're talking about recent academic papers and recent data, recent being within the last 5 to 7 years. Therefore, you should use peer-reviewed published journal articles or official websites of different agencies that track that data. Most books, the data is very old, greater than 5 to 7 years. So you should avoid using books, and you should avoid using secondary sources such as newspapers or news magazines such as Newsweek, Time, etc. These are not the primary sources. They've gotten their data from somewhere else and are really not acceptable. You want to make sure you use peer-reviewed primary resources for all your statistical data. Next, the paper requires that you provide a position statement by a professional nursing association. Now remember, if you're writing a paper, the position statement does not have to directly relate to that exact subject. So let's say you're talking about lack of access for African Americans having colon cancer screening as your paper subject. You don't need to find a nursing position statement on that particular subject. You can be a little more broad. So you can look at a nursing association statement on access to preventative care services, and that would relate directly back to this expectation. And finally, the paper requires that you make your own position statement regarding this subject. So this is where you have the opportunity to share your opinion or your thoughts on the health disparity. So what your professor has done is they've provided you with an outline for your paper already, as included in the grading rubric. They've told you to identify a health disparity that affects a minority population, to discuss the impact of that health disparity on that population, perform a literature review that includes statistical data supporting the existence of the health disparity on that population and the impact of the health disparity on that population, provide a position statement of a nursing association, and provide a personal statement regarding the health disparity. Now, all papers should include an introduction and a summary. The purpose of the introduction is you're going to tell the audience exactly what you're going to tell them. In this paper, I will discuss this health disparity on this population and its outcomes. In the summary, you essentially tell the audience what you've already told them. In this paper, we have discussed the impact of this health disparity on this population. All right, so now you've got the outline, but now what? You know nothing about the subject, you know nothing about health disparities. How do you move on from here? Well, this is a technique that I use when writing a paper that I found very helpful, and I want to share it with you. I will start by going to Google Scholar, that's scholar.google.com, and type in my search function. In this case, it would be health disparities and minority. I'll then narrow my search to make it more relevant. I'll remove patents and citations from my search to make it more appropriate. I'll then narrow the number of years that it will search the database to make it more relevant to my paper. I'll then review the results of the search, looking for a journal article or subject that I might find interesting and will meet the criteria for the paper. I'll select the paper that I think looks like it meets the criteria for the assignment that I'm interested in. I'll then review the abstract to see if the paper meets the needs for the assignment. If the paper does meet my needs, I'll then copy the reference for that paper so I can download the article later from the university library. I'll then paste the reference into either a Word document or some other citation manager so I can refer to it later and also begin my bibliography for the paper. I'll then repeat this process until I feel I've found enough references to use for the paper. Many papers or universities will have set criteria on the required number of references for an academic assignment. Make sure you refer back to the rubric or to your academic faculty to determine exactly how many references are appropriate for the written assignment. So once I've performed my Google search and I've downloaded the articles that I've decided to use, I will then fill out the outline prior to writing the paper. Never write a paper off the top of your head. Always outline the paper in advance to make it more clear exactly what you're going to say. If you look here on the slide, you can see I've begun to fill out the outline for this particular paper. I've identified the health disparity as lack of access for minority sexual youth to mental health care services. I've also identified the contributing factors include cultural taboos relating to sexual minorities, economic factors, and limited facilities available to help this population. And if you look on the outline, I also include the references that support that data. This makes it very easy for me to build my paper from this outline, and so I quickly can reference back to the journal article that gave me that data. I will then move through each component of the outline, utilizing the references that I've downloaded to fill out the outline. From the outline, I will then write the complete paper. So the key elements for writing an effective academic paper, first and foremost, include downloading and reviewing either the paper outline, the paper expectations, or the grading rubric for the paper, so you fully understand what the assignment's about. Once you've done that, outline the expectations for the paper, so you have it down exactly what you need to do to complete the assignment. You then want to perform a data search, finding peer-reviewed current references that you can use in your paper that are appropriate to the subject that you're discussing. From this data search, you want to build your bibliography or your reference page. You then complete an outline for your paper from these references, and then complete the paper from this outline. Following this process, you'll better and more effectively write papers that will help you in your academic career. I hope you found this tutorial helpful.